Hello, Michael. I want to play a game.
Oh man, it's great to be back. And this time we ain't talking Saw X. We talking Saw 11, baby. And I'm sorry to have you wait, but you know the best things are worth waiting for. And this one is 20 plus threads that we can push forward in the franchise that doesn't disrupt, damage, or destroy what has come forward, you know? There's not much gap from 5 to 7, but of course, my thinking is that we have a movie that's either right after Saw X before Saw 2, overlapping Saw 2, or right after Saw 2 in that 6 months in between Saw 2 and Saw 3 and 4. So I don't want to get into so much of the details that I will get into, but like I said, these are 20 plus threads and theories and ideas that we can focus on, fixate on, and we can imagine what the future installment, if we get that, if these strikes can finish, the actors still can't perform because they're not being treated fairly. So if you want to see Tobin Bell and Saw 11, let's keep on giving these guys support. They deserve it. Let's not rush it through if they haven't got the best deal, right? Anyway, let's get straight to it. Number one, Cecilia won her game while Kramer, Amanda, and Carlos left the old chemical factory. So, does anyone discover that abandoned chemical factory before Cecilia can escape? That's an interesting question because we definitely don't know yet, right? Of course, there hasn't been a follow-up quite yet, and it'll be interesting to know if there was anyone in the vicinity that was able to either catch a glimpse of Amanda or Jigsaw or Peterson. So we don't know. Does she escape at all? Is that room even unlockable, or was it left in a way that she can escape? I wouldn't think Jigsaw would let a person who won their game die in that way. That's the whole point of his traps. So she deserves a second chance no matter what. She definitely earned it. She won her game. After that game that she won, could it be that Amanda went behind Kramer's back and killed Peterson? She did allude to wanting to do it, but Jigsaw did rationalize with her that, hey, if anyone should understand a second chance, it would be you. But hey, Amanda's vengeful tirade and killing spree starts soon after this movie, so we'll see if that ever comes to place. Number two, by killing Gabriella, Cecilia averted the ambulance from arriving, so the original plan could have been to have her or Mr. Sears arrested after the end of their final game. Or Kramer had a strong inclination that Cecilia would deny the call to the ambulance, knowing she would be exposed to being the figurehead of a scam operation. It could have been one of those possibilities Kramer saw, but knew would be less likely as Peterson wouldn't want any law enforcement involved. Keep in mind, she was always designed to be last in the game, in the Mexico game. Number three, she was beyond evil to be able to orchestrate these scams for cancer patients who are looking for any solutions they can find to survive. The will to live can allow the defeat of obstacles, but a body with cancer is a deterioration of the physical abilities to continue fighting. So for those people, it isn't a matter of having a missing piece of the survival instinct, but missing pieces are being ripped from their healthy bodies. On top of that, Peterson is abusing their will to live, which is a pure slap to Kramer's worldview. Cancer patients who fight to be healthy are exhibiting the characteristics of people who have their willingness to fight to survive and cherish the time they have remaining. How much more pain can these patients take? Well, it seems Cecilia tried to answer that question. Having said that, would Kramer try to recruit her after seeing her true morals? I would guess not, but she did win her game, so she gets another chance. We don't see her for the rest of the franchise, so will we see her die in Saw 11? Number four, as I have mentioned prior, the "What's the cure to cancer" soliloquy Kramer gave to Matthews is even more relevant after Saw X. Remember that game was designed for Amanda to take over John's work. We know Amanda goes on to inflict the pain she has felt onto her victims like Carrie, Adam, and Matthews without granting them the gift of life. Inflicting pain on herself morphed into inflicting pain on others. Although we do see in Saw 3 she was still cutting herself, we never saw her relapse to drugs. Most likely, Kramer would have been able to discern if she was on drugs or not. Just like Amanda, Jigsaw hurt himself during the suicide attempt, but that was one event. Amanda would cut herself consistently with drug addiction for years, it seems. So I'm guessing she didn't see the benefit of continue to do drugs, or she found a new high in hurting people. But that led to her abusing the newfound philosophy and future victims in parentheses given by Kramer. Number 5. Hoffman and Amanda's dynamics would be absolutely beautiful to explore, as there is a 6-month gap from Saw 2 to Saw 3 and 4, and Saw X is weeks after the events of Saw 1. Kramer's beard and hair growth seems to prove that the sequence with Kessler and the cancer group was weeks after Saw 1. So, Kessler reunites with Kramer 4 months later, making Saw X about or around 6 months after Saw 1. Pretty much 6 months before Saw 2 and 6 months after Saw 2 before Saw 3/4 are spaces that can be tackled in Saw 11. So it fits perfectly with the talks of Hoffman being key to the next sequel, especially considering he was teased in the post-credit scene. Probably would be cleaner to do the story after Saw 2 and the 6-month gap that would be until Saw 3 and 4. We could see moments before Saw 2, but the vast majority of the movie would be after. Yeah, I think it would be cleaner to do it in that gap just because we know what's coming in Saw 2, where we have really no idea what was happening in between Saw 2 and Saw 3 and 4. So it's just, you don't have to damage anything in Saw 2 potentially by tackling that time. Just you could pass that movie and tackle that 6-month gap in between. And actually, that gap could potentially bridge the gap with all the accomplices minus, Logan and William Emerson / whatever his name is. So besides those two, you could see Dr. Gordon, Amanda, and Hoffman during that time frame. As we know, Dr. Gordon was involved in that time frame, and we know Amanda was directly helping him, and Hoffman, of course, was handling the bulk of the work. Number 6. We know Dr. Gordon helps initiate the Matthews game with Michael's key surgery trap. Dr. Gordon definitely helped supply the medical equipment present in the warehouse of Saw 2, like the chair he was wearing, the IV, the pills, all that treatment definitely, was supplied by Gordon. And he was playing his role as the background asset. He goes on to recommend Dr. Lin for Saw 3. So will he be involved in the trap for Cecilia Peterson if she is tested again? Of course, with his background in the medical industry, her false, use of her credentials, if she even is accredited doctor, we can't even trust that. I asked that because having rewatched Saw 2, it's clear they do not know John Kramer as Jigsaw, but the public knew of Jigsaw. Hence why Peterson put it all together during the Mexico game. She is the only one who would use the knowledge of Kramer being Jigsaw against him. So she either kept it a secret, or that is the reason Kramer went public. I doubt that last statement. We know why he did it. Saw X was him presenting himself to the victims, and Saw 2 was presenting Kramer to the public. It is feasible to think Peterson is in hiding, avoiding law enforcement at all costs. So his plans was always to set his own narrative, even if it got out he was Jigsaw. Remember, having a legacy was his cure to cancer. Also, Kramer exposing her as the leader of the scam operation to the public would ensure her silence. Number 7. Saw X gave Amanda the confidence to do what she did in Saw 2. Thus, she needed to involve herself in the game like Jigsaw did in Saw, Saw 2, Saw 3, and Saw X. Hoffman is Kramer's main assistant in the Matthews game, and after dropping an unconscious Abby, he asked Kramer why he needed to put Amanda in the game. To ensure the rules are followed, he said. He clearly helped him get intel on all of his victims and all of Matthew's arrested victims in the game. So he helped push Amanda's game into motion. That experience may have jolted in the mind of Hoffman that he would be tested again, and that he may have to work under Amanda's whim. Did he know he was tested when he was recruited? Sure, he noticed when Kramer cocked the shotgun. Nonetheless, Hoffman helped Amanda and Kramer stay hidden away from law enforcement. Maybe in Saw 11, we see Hoffman picking them up from the scene at the end of Saw 2. Amanda was a participant of the game, so Hoffman was handling the bulk of the work for the Nerve Gas House game. Hoffman is fully aware Amanda is the one positioned to take over, so he begins to plan his takeover. He discovered that Amanda was with Cecil the night of Gideon's death and uses it to force Amanda to kill Lynn, which suggests Hoffman was privy to more than the basic details of that Saw 3 game. So potentially we could see, and we saw in Saw X, the flourishing of Amanda and Kramer's relationship. We really saw it for the first time really be forefront, and we got to spend more time with them. We got to see their dynamic. Will Saw 11 be that for Hoffman? We get a chance to see Hoffman and Jigsaw's more personal relationship and see how their relationship grew. If it was only blackmail based, or did it grow beyond that? And I believe it did grow beyond that. Hoffman did adopt a lot of what he believed in, but of course, he believed in carnage, and he rarely gave anyone a chance, So that time frame will be the perfect opportunity to see how Hoffman put everything together. And we could even see him looking for that information on Kramer and Amanda, and finding out and discovering the footage of it. So there's so many things that you could see in this time frame. There's about a year, but Saw 2 overlaps right after that 6 month, right? So it's risky to do it. Jigsaw is not selling the ownership of his legacy to Hoffman like he did to Amanda, but he was promised anonymity. Hoffman couldn't get his wish if Amanda was still alive. It's feasible she would have blackmailed him to do her dirty work after John's death. So in Hoffman's mind, he had to kill Amanda to truly be free. Number 9. Hoffman waited until Jigsaw was present to do the Kessler game in the bathroom. So we could see the opening scene for Saw 11 be following up with Finn and Cecilia Peterson. And, Hoffman could be there, of course, and or Amanda. We could see, them tackling them together. Number 10, Dr. Finn Peterson may have given Kramer a legitimate treatment or procedure to prolong his life. Hoffman definitely would have looked up his whereabouts and personal information. It's quite feasible to presume Cecilia's first contact was her father and not law enforcement of any kind. Number 11, Carlos being placed in the Mexico game may have given Kramer confidence that Daniel Matthews could indeed be a participant in the Nerve gas house. He was a pivotal entry in the game to test Detective Matthews, as he knew that would pull at his heartstrings during their conversation, quote unquote, just like Carlos did for Kramer himself. Number 12, even with all his health problems, Matthews caused a lot of further damage to Kramer at the end of Saw 2, so he needed as much help as he could get to complete his legacy. Amanda took direct care of Kramer, while Hoffman, Dr. Gordon, and her shared continuing the games. In Saw 11, it would be interesting to see more of Dr. Gordon's role, as neither Hoffman or Amanda knew of his involvement. Just like Saw 2, Dr. Gordon helped initiate the Saw 4 games with the mouth/eye stitching game. So how involved would he be in the time frame that could be the focus of Saw 11? Hoffman might very well take center stage for Saw 11, and with talks of his Saw 12 completing his story, Dr. Gordon must be involved in some way. Number 13, could Dr. Gordon get Kramer the medical recommendations to get the Finn Peterson treatment? Only reason I asked that is that, of course, he failed the first time, but could he separately go with a former doctor of his recommendation, and maybe the Norwegian medical industry would allow him to get this treatment? Because maybe he would have to go through official channels to get this done, right? And the only one we know that's officially involved in the medical industry is Dr. Gordon. We don't know what Logan is doing at this point in time. And I believe he's actually stationed in Iraq at this point. So he couldn't even be involved, So number 14, could we see Hoffman be given his own game that we were not privy to, that gave Kramer the confidence Hoffman could be a proper successor to him? I know it appears Hoffman emulated Jigsaw pretty well, but he designed it to kill, not as a test. So I believe Kramer would still like to know if he could handle a game that grants the gift of life. Saw 11 would be a perfect opportunity to explore that very thing, and we could also see Dr. Gordon being asked to oversee the outcome of the game. But not necessarily be directly involved, of course, because he has to stay in the shadows. But we would like to see, the beginnings of him following Hoffman. Number 15. I was falsely going down a road that was questioning the significance of the clock tower because it's pretty clear that is how he was able to find their secret chemical factory. I would add that the way they transported him to that remote hospital after his surgery was a huge reason he wanted to see them again, besides, of course, delivering his parting gift. Having said that, I don't want to lose sight of the line he stages to Cecilia. My son, and in parentheses, could be son as biological son, is set to rise again. A bonkers idea would be if Cecilia is asked to be Kramer's child's surrogate mother. Sounds crazy, but it could have very well been a seed placed for us to see grow later. It could explain her absence in the later movies if it is proven she has aligned herself with Kramer in any which way. I know the idea is ridiculous, but you never know. His son is set to rise again, baby. Number 16. If Saw 11 takes place after Saw 2, it would give the opportunity to see what happened to Daniel Matthews. Could he be Jigsaw's adopted son that will rise again? Number 17. I have spoken on the idea that Carlos could be the Spiral Killer, and however, the more I think about it, the more probable it becomes. You have to consider that he fits the age and the culture of William Emerson, quote unquote, because I don't trust that's his name at all. We have no idea who he is. Also, he wouldn't have been involved in any further movie until maybe Jigsaw or Spiral due to his age. The producers will have to answer the questions left behind those movies so the story can move forward. We can't have those future movies in limbo forever. We need something to account for those. Number 18. After the end of Saw 4, it's hard to imagine a story you can make in between the events of Saw 5 and 7 due to how fast everything progressed after that. Saw 5 focuses on Strum figuring Hoffman out right after he is released from the hospital. Jill didn't hold on to those Eastman/Hoffman envelopes for too long after she received them, so there isn't a huge gap between Saw 5 and 6, and Saw 7 picks up immediately after Saw 6, so there's not much that can be made during that time frame, unless it's a flashback to a scene with Hoffman. Number 19. If the Saw 11 story is right after Saw X, but before Saw 2, we could see a game that Amanda and Hoffman have to work together, while Kramer is focusing on another game we didn't know about. Jigsaw may have wanted to see how they work together on their own before starting the Nerve Gas House game, and his other game would have been focused on Dr. Gordon, and it could be the big twist. That would set the stage for a Dr. Gordon versus Hoffman movie in the 12th entry. Number 20. How will Logan play a role in further installments? I would love to see him again. You know, you got to make these movies count. And the way to make it count is to incorporate him in the main storyline, you know? You either mention him in the further timeline where things are pushing forward and he connects with William Emerson, or the Spiral Killer, I should say, or you see how he was, you see it, you know, retconned or fixed, or you know, it's mostly a stated error. It's not something that's so definitive that they can't fix. So maybe they try to go back and explain more. They give you more context of what Logan was saying. Number 21. Will we finally get to see who was with Gordon when he captured Hoffman? I'm referring to those two pig masks, and I know, you know, behind the scenes they spoke about it, but in canon, in movie, they have not answered that question. So is it a coincidence that there's two inspired killers in Logan and William, and they had two pig masks with Dr. Gordon? Not entirely sure. But I'm of the mind that this next installment will be fixated in that Saw 2 to Saw 4 time frame. I don't know how you try to make a game that overlaps the Nerve Gas House game. But again, just like this wasn't a huge amount of time. This was 6 months, so they could, like, again, they could make another movie before the Nerve Gas House game started, you know? And if you want to bring back Tobin Bell, that's the best way and the most feasible way without, you know, getting supernatural with it, you know? He's still alive during this time. His health is becoming more deteriorated, of course, as these movies progress. He ends up in a wheelchair in Saw 2, and by Saw 3, he's in he's in his deathbed. So we will we will have to see which one they choose, but he would be more capable of doing things um, before Saw 2 starts, you know. But it also gives a great opportunity for Amanda to come back and be involved because Jigsaw can't take care of himself. You know, Kramer can't take care of himself. So wherever he goes, she goes. And if the rumors are correct that the next one's a prequel sequel, Hoffman's going to play a pivotal role. So he doesn't play a role until Saw 3, till you see he's a detective. Well, of course, now with Saw X, that's changed. You've seen it beforehand. Well, we've seen these movies, so for me, it would always be that I first discovered Hoffman in Saw 3. How does it become the forefront when he's pretty much playing a background role? Well, that's how they presented him, right? We didn't know what he was doing during the Saw 3 game because Saw 4 is happening at the same time. It's just we get an opportunity to see more of Hoffman and Jigsaw, hopefully. It could also be a situation where it's as time jumpy as possible, you know, where it's touching before Saw 2, after Saw 2 is going all the way. Because if it's a Hoffman focused movie, right, uh, um, they can tackle a lot more. They can tackle flashbacks between 4, 5, 6, and 7, because that's where Hoffman takes center stage. So, how they do that, we'll see. My final question will be having Hoffman back, having Amanda involved, having Tobin Bell, having Kramer himself. Can we have the next movie be more connected to the bigger story? Or will it be more of a standalone that tries to not, you know, damage or overlap? Because I know with the technology, could we go back and, you know, use former scenes and incorporate it with newer scenes to to create flashbacks that really make it feel like it's inside of the original 7. Saw X definitely does as good as a job to do that, but I'm saying using flashbacks would be that much cooler. I love flashbacks, especially the way these creators use them. So um, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. There's just so many things that they can push on, and if you notice, most of my threads were focused and fixated around that time frame. So I don't see how they can make a story after 5, 6, and 7 because those are all back to back to back events. So, like I said, this will have to be the time it's a sequel, unless they go skip that and they go directly into, pushing it forward, and that would mean Hoffman's alive, or we just find out what Dr. Gordon is doing and what ultimately happened with Dr. Gordon, and how that links to Logan, and there's so many things that they have to answer if the next one is a sequel. But if it's not a sequel and it is this prequel sequel, it's just gonna be fucking interesting to find out where it takes place, and my theories and my threads will change the moment those things are confirmed. And remember, the writers can write, and I'm sure they're thinking of so many ideas, and they already had ideas. Now, of course, I always love to send love back to the people who comment on my videos, so of course that's what we're gonna do. Shout out to DJTS1991. He says, been busy and had my birthday. Happy birthday, champ. So I haven't had time to watch this yet. Great video. Thank you so much, my G. Kramer really has a thing against drug addicts, which I've noticed. As someone with a master's in education, with additional studies in history, psychology, and family with addiction issues, it's a bit more complicated than Kramer thinks it is. Generally, not always, but generally, people turn to addiction because they do not think they have any other alternative to their current circumstances. It's only when something replaces the addiction, a purpose, a mission, a way forward, that the addiction disappears. But it can always resurface when the addicted becomes stuck and the cycle starts again. This addiction can be drugs, video games, screens, drinking, smoking, gambling, etc. Many of Jigsaw's followers may find themselves temporarily rehabilitated when they become game developers themselves. I like that, taking on Kramer's philosophy as their own. But people get bored or stagnant. They need psychological variety. And it's the whole reason why Jill's clinic was likely set up in the first place. It's a process that takes time, and people don't find a replacement right away. And I think Amanda recognizes all of this, hence why she doesn't feel comfortable taking over from Kramer. I really, really enjoyed the movie. It was more of a character study slash drama than a conventional hacker and slasher film, and was slower paced, which I appreciated. My sister borderline vomiting on her food while watching on the icing was the icing on the cake. LOL. I feel like this could be the first of the trilogy, one focused on Kramer, a second for Amanda between 2 and 3, and one on Hoffman after 7. It would be very cool if Peterson was a recurring villain in future films. The idea of pitting her against the main gang in future films sounds awesome. Wow, this is an absolutely amazing comment. I do want to add the context that I believe Kramer is mostly focused on the free will aspect of what they were willing to do to get their fix. Because you can't fault them for being drug addicts and for using drugs individually. But if you're willing to become a criminal or do criminal acts in order to fulfill your fix, I think that's where absolutely an intervention needs to be spoken about. And, there's something that needs to be done. Of course, I don't believe a saw trap is that solution, but obviously, there's more action that needs to be done because there's not much more that needs to be seen to understand that this person has taken drugs and taken it to a level that, so the drugs have taken them to the ends in which they would become criminals and they would do heinous acts in order to, get another get another bottle. As you see with Gabriella, bottle can imply many things: alcohol, pills, heroin bottles, like medical bottles. There's so many ways to look at that. I'm glad that you took time to break down Amanda's mind state, because from her personal view, she could think that exactly. She could think that she personally is being targeted due to her drug addiction, and not necessarily the criminal actions she did trying to get her drugs. But both were bad things, and I believe she was tested for her criminal acts, not necessarily just because she was a drug addict. Although he did get Paul from Saw One, and he was mostly no. It was a very similar case actually. He was a suicidal, overweight, you know, alcoholic, angry man. So it comes from the same vein. So it has more to do with the deterioration of their character. Of course, the substance is important, but the fact is that the lifestyle. He's not attacking people who are just drug addicts, um, picking up their drugs and going home. No, he's referring to people who are actual criminals who are willing to do what they have to in order to get, their drugs. What else did you say here? I see here in the end of your comment you refer to what could actually be possible in Saw 11 and 12, and I find that to be very accurate to what I believe as well. It would absolutely be cool if Peterson was a recurring villain. She was a standout. She was visceral. She was incredible. Beautiful accent, beautiful woman, beautiful performance. We need to see her again, and they obviously left her there alive. It's funny just to add, my brother was convinced that she was left for dead, but I don't believe she was left for dead. And I don't think most people think that. But I'm saying, hey, there's probably some people out there that think she's dead. Shout out to Steven Balloons. I'm hoping his son, quote unquote, that rises again is Adam. Right. I didn't want to lose sight of that actual idea because, of course, John Kramer's a complicated, poetic speaker, right? The mentally poetic, but he's definitely poetic, and he knows how to put things together. And there's always like a double entendre behind what he speaks on. So when he looks at his sun rising, he says, "My sun is set to rise again." Other than seeing the sun, I do believe that wasn't a throwaway line. I think that has a reason and significance. And Adam being that sun again, I don't know. Now that we've seen Saw X, maybe they don't even tackle that. 'Cause, it just would ruin some of the credibility that Saw has allowed itself by killing off the Kramers, by killing off the Amandas. Anyone could go, and there's just a certain level of credibility. You just believe the deaths, you feel the deaths, and they feel that much more important when you know they're really dead, as opposed to they could come out of nowhere post death or in a way that's stretching believability. You got to find a way to keep it going. So I see where your mind is going. Shout out to Stephen Balones. Thank you. Now for Emiliano Agrier Ogrier Serrano. Be cool if Carlos became an apprentice in the future and went on a mission to kill all the other apprentices like Gordon and the dude from the Jigsaw movie and Spiral. So you're not in the mindset that Carlos is William Emerson. And obviously, that would be someone else that obviously would have a motivation to protect John Kramer, and protect what he believed in and things of that nature. So, hey, if he's not William and he's its own distinct character, I love that you've mentioned this because I didn't take time to think about that reality. And Carlos can absolutely be an apprentice that obviously will try to respond for Kramer after his death. He's gonna try to see what Logan's on. We'll see. We'll never know. But I love that idea that Carlos is actually not um, Chank or whatever you want to call this guy, and he's actually a distinct character. And maybe they could do something with him. So thank you. Shout out to Gary D. That was my guy that made sure that I was on point when it came to why he was doing that sketch with the radio tower. He was just trying to pinpoint his location or their location. So he texts, maybe I'm crazy, but I thought maybe I'm crazy, but I thought he was drawing the sketch of the tower and stuff in order to be able to get back to where he was for the treatment. You not crazy, my brother. You absolutely on point. You're absolutely right. But it doesn't change the fact that this my sun's set to rise again means something. I believe that it does. And then, hey, it's Kim 1028 obviously disagrees. They write, I think he meant sun like the sun rises and sets. Nah, Kramer doesn't just state things for no reason. He told it that for a reason. And if you saw the video, if you got here, then you saw that. You never know. Peterson could be the surrogate mother. Shout out to Atfly Gonker 1781. I've been a Saw fan since the beginning, and I like most of them, unlike the plebs who can't follow the plot after Saw 3. Right. They act like, sometimes horror fans act like their brains are like mice size, because just a little bit of brain power would have got you to understand that worked perfectly. Hoffman's transition was fucking special. That was awesome, and they were able to push the franchise forward even without their main character, and they showed you that it can be done. Of course, it's never going to be the same if you don't have Tobin Bell involved, but Hoffman did a hell of a job. His voice, his cadence, his demeanor, his performance. Come on, Hoffman made those movies, and if you just really pay attention to the flashbacks, it gives you so much feels and so much satisfaction to see Hoffman's connections to Saw 1 and 2. Like, the Saw franchise really knows how to respect the original Saw movie, the complete opposite of what Halloween has done. You know what I'm saying? So they really know how to respect the number one original movie that is the claim to fame for the franchise. And that is a huge element of why these movies work. The connectivity, the puzzle piece like structure is just there, and it's just awesome, man. Shout out to Panda Head 602. Carlos got great money, but he should have never been there. A child is so sad. And thinking about it, I'm pretty sure Kramer could have thought that was a possibility. And maybe that was what he was alluding to when he said we're running out of time, right? When he says we're running out of time, there's no law enforcement on their way, right? No ambulance was called. There's no, there's, So what is he? Oh, well, he did say that the sun is set to rise again. Oh, that's interesting. My sun is set to rise again could have been what he's referring to. That at the end of the game, his sun was set to rise again. That could have been the double entendre he's referring to. If it's not referring to an actual sun, because the game ends with the sun setting. So it's actually that actually works. Just so actually, thank you, Panda Head. You made me think about that one. And again, I'm sure Carlos he believed could have been a possibility. You can't blame him necessarily. There's no way he could have predicted that Peterson would have put Carlos in the game, and he even alludes to that. You know, this wasn't supposed to happen. The game was pretty much designed for Amanda and Kramer to be in it. So I don't think Kramer expected that. So of course not. It's very sad that Carlos was in it. But man, he's earned that money. He, like Kramer said, he's an absolute warrior. So again, I had such a good time making this one again. So like, comment, and subscribe so I could continue to make awesome movies and awesome content, and I could ultimately continue to make these theory videos because they're always fun to make. So have a great day, and I'll see you next time.